Madam Chair, you have a live mic.
Good morning. I'd like to call the August 22nd, 2025 Big Cypress Basin Board meeting to order. If everyone would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, board members. It's good to see everyone today. We're a little light on the day as Mr. Romano will not be joining us today. For those joining remotely, thank you for your continued interest and support. And as a reminder, today's proceedings are accessible via Zoom as well as Collier TV and the district's website. Board members, please make sure your microphone is on and that you speak into the mic so online attendees can hear you. If you turn your head while you're speaking, move the mic so we can make sure your comments are captured. And please try to get as close to the microphone as possible. To be recognized, please use the buttons on the dais. For public comment, for those here in person, if you would like to comment on an agenda item, please complete a speaker card from the lobby and bring it up front to Troy Miller, who is to my right. If you're joining by Zoom, use the raise the hand feature and Troy will call on you. And if you're participating via phone, *9 raises your hand and *6 mutes and unmutes. That brings us to agenda revisions. Ms. Keeler, are there any agenda revisions?
No, Madam Chair, there is not.
Okay, thank you. That brings us then to the selection of vice chair, our first item of business today. Every member of this board has contributed exceptionally to the Basin's mission and is well suited for this position. Consideration was given to board members who had a minimum of 1 year remaining on their appointment. And there are 2 members who meet this criteria, Ms. P.J. Smith and Ms. Michelle McLeod. Since both of you are highly qualified, I would like to make a motion to nominate both P.J. Smith and Michelle McLeod to successive 1-year terms as vice chair of the Big Cypress Basin Board. Let's go with P.J. first, you serving as vice chair beginning today on August 2025 through July 2026. And then Michelle, you serving as vice chair August 2026 to July 2027. And I'd like to make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that since my name's not on it.
All right, Andy, thank you for the second. We'll conduct a roll call. Mr. Hill?
Yes.
Ms. McLeod?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you, board members, and I will bring back this matter to the Basin Board for further discussion should it be necessary between now and the next 2 years. And Ms. Smith, if you'd like to move to the vice chair seat, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
That brings us to agenda item abstentions by board members. This is the time when board members, if you have any abstentions or disclosures on the agenda, we'll go ahead and begin with Vice Chair Smith. Any abstentions or disclosures?
No, Madam Chair.
Mr. Hill?
None.
Ms. McLeod?
None with me.
And I have none. Okay, that moves us to consider approval of the minutes for the July 7th, 2025 meeting. I'd like a motion and a second to approve those minutes if there are no changes or additions to the minutes.
I so move.
Okay, we got a motion to approve the minutes. Can I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Ms. McLeod. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Okay, that brings us to the Basin Administrator's report. Lisa?
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I have several things I want to cover today. Lots of things have happened. Sorry, I feel like I'm getting some feedback. Hold on. Yes? Am I good? No slides. No, I just felt like there's some feedback. Okay. So a lot of things have happened since our July board meeting. So if you'll indulge me with a little extra time, I have several things I want to tell you about. First, for our capital projects. I'm happy to announce that the I-75 Weir #1 demolition, that contract was signed 2 days ago. Thomas Marine has been awarded that contract, and they will start demolition of that weir sometime early fall, and said we should wrap up early of 2026. So that capital project is getting off and moving. So we're very excited about that. The next one is the restrooms out at Bird Rookery Swamp. If you remember, we are adding some nicer restroom facilities for the hikers for recreation out at Bird Rookery. And that was slated to be completed in the spring of 2026, I would say, maybe April, maybe even May. And we've had a little bit of good luck come our way. We had a set of bathrooms that were going to go to Dupuy at the district. And that site actually wasn't ready to receive the bathrooms. And Rory Feeney and his land management staff quickly pivoted with that. We worked very closely with Collier County Growth Management. We had to get a site development plan in substantial change. We're hoping that goes through in the next week or so. And those bathrooms will be placed early September. So just in time for this year's hiking season for all of our residents. So those bathrooms are going to be in place a full 7 months ahead of schedule. So very excited about that. Then moving on from capital, we've got a lot of meetings and events that are coming up before your next board meeting in October. The first one, starting next Wednesday, is the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative public meeting. That will be actually in this room at 1 o'clock. If you remember, the Corkscrew Watershed is looking at restoration efforts for the headwaters of Collier County and the Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary, looking how we can restore that hydration. The meeting is going to be focused on a set of potential projects to help with that restoration effort. So that is the public meeting next Wednesday. The next item is Keep Collier Beautiful. The International Coastal Cleanup is scheduled for Saturday, September 20th at 8 o'clock. I think that is on all of y'all's calendars. It's a great program. If people are not familiar with Keep Collier Beautiful, please go to their website, check it out. They're looking for volunteers. There's a lot of spots around our entire community that need trash picked up. One of them is our canals. PJ, you did that last year with your real estate association. And so we are looking for volunteers to be captains at our canals and do that cleanup along with Keep Collier Beautiful in September. So that's another great event that's happening. Then there's some agreements that have in the works or been completed since our last board meeting. The first one is the recreational access point with Collier County for Green Heart of the Everglades. That agreement has been finalized. It is scheduled for the Board of County Commissioners meeting on September 23rd for final execution. There's another agreement back at Bird Rookery. We have a lease with Collier County for that parking facility where the bathrooms are going, and that agreement is expiring soon. And so we are working at renewing that agreement with Collier County. We're hoping that will be completed and back on their Board of County Commissioners agenda in October before our next board meeting. That looks like it's going to go through pretty quickly. And then the last agreement is with Rookery Bay. If you remember at our July meeting, when we were talking about pythons and looking at the map of where public lands, we had agreements to where our python hunters could be hunting. Rookery Bay was one of those we did not yet have an agreement executed with. Since that meeting, we have been working very closely with Jeff Carter, their executive director. We are very close to having that contract in place, and our python hunters will be able to be in Rookery Bay. And I'm smiling because PJ, it's important just we have hunters, but a lot of folks might not be aware that our pythons are moving into urban areas and and specifically into Miss Smith's neighborhood. So her community has had their own python removal. So it's very important that we get this agreement executed and hunters in there. So we're happy about that one as well. And then finally, last one I have is after today with the adoption of your final budget, we have one more step with 2026 capital plan. Our cooperative agreement we have with Collier County requires me to take my capital plan for 2026 to the Board of County Commissioners for their final approval of that proposed capital plan. We will be doing that in early October as well. So we have a lot of things coming, up with the Board of County Commissioners in the next 2 months. Madam Chair, that rounds out my announcements unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Keeler. Are there any questions for the Basin Administrator? I don't see any questions. Great.
right.
You're busy. You have a lot on your plate right now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that brings us to the first general public comment period. We're going to have two opportunities during this meeting for the public to address anything that's not on the agenda. And we'll start with anyone who is here in the room, followed by those participating virtually.
Madam Chair, I have no speaker slips submitted here in the room and no hands currently raised on Zoom.
Okay, great. Then that brings us to our first board comment period. Board members, this is your opportunity to share anything with your fellow board members. Do I have any board comment? Mr. Hill?
I'd like to make everybody aware of the Red Snook Fishing Tournament to benefit the Conservancy, and those funds generally go towards water-based programs. The tournament is on, I believe, October 25th and 6th, Saturday and Sunday. I'm sure everybody on the board wants to participate and is lining up their team. But just in the case that they have not found a partner or their boat is under repair, you can participate by attending the kickoff party, which would be a heck of a lot more fun than the stressful fishing on Friday night at the Conservancy. I believe it kicks off about 5:30 or 6 p.m. And that's usually a great social engagement. And they usually have food and an open bar and a band. So it's a nice mix between the people that are participating and community involved people too, as well. So I want to make sure you're aware. And here's your invitation in a public forum.
That's great, Andy. And when you bring back the trophy, please share it with the board.
Everybody will know if I place in the tournament, you will know. Thank you.
Ms. McLeod,
No, I have nothing. Thank you.
Vice Chair Smith?
I have nothing as well.
I have a couple things. First of all, congratulations, PJ, on serving as our vice chair.
Thank you.
Also, I want to thank Rory Feeney, who snagged those bathrooms and found a place for them and is going to put them at Bird Rookery Swamp and accelerate that schedule. That's good news. And I know we're going to hear from him later, but I wanted to give a special thank you to Mike Weston and the Florida Forest Service for just a great visit to the Picayune Strand Restoration Project with you and your crew, especially the pilot that took some of the members of the Basin Board team up to see, and myself, to see what the hydrology really looks like after we've had some rain and with the Miller Pump Station operational. And I know Brad's going to get into it a little further in his water conditions report today. But thank you, Mike. The whole team from the Forest Service has truly been a great partner with the district and certainly with the Basin. So I want to just give you a shout out for that. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our first presentation, which is from Katie Lockinen with the Naples Bay Oyster Habitat Restoration Project update. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Katie Lockinen with the City of Naples Natural Resources Division. It is great to be here today to provide you with an update on the city's oyster restoration efforts in Naples Bay. So hopefully my mouse translates to the screen here. It does. So the main area I will be discussing today is this southeast portion of Naples Bay. So for Naples Bay and the Gordon River system, our main inputs of fresh water is the Haldeman Creek, Rock Creek tributaries, as well as the Golden Gate Canal. We know from historical aerials that Naples Bay was a mangrove dominated system. So you'll see Gordon Pass down here on the lower left in each of the present day aerials and the 1940 aerials. So all of this is mangrove habitat. You'll see natural creeks through here. You'll also see some signatures of sandbars and oyster bars up and down the bay that almost go completely across the bay. That's how shallow it was. So within this time period between the 40s and present day, we've lost around 80 to 90% of our oysters, seagrass, and mangrove habitat. So one of our goals is to get some of that habitat back into Naples Bay. And the way we're doing that is through oyster restoration. And we want to create these reefs to be resilient. So we build them a little higher to account for sea level rise. These are filter feeders, so they naturally cleanse the water. They take particulates out, bacteria, nutrients, which can result in clearer water, which benefits seagrass and has that domino effect. These are also excellent habitats for invertebrates. Hundreds of invertebrates call oyster reefs home. We have sea stars, shrimp, stone crabs, which is a key fishery here. And we also see a lot of birds foraging in these reef areas and on the flats at low tide. And I'll lastly mention the shoreline protection aspect of the reef. So when we have boat wakes and storms hitting these areas, these reefs really combat that and help mitigate and knock down that wave energy. We have 3 sites that we permitted for oyster restoration. So we have our site 1, which was completed first down here off of the Windstar Conservation Mangrove area. This was our largest site, and our smallest site is up here where Rock Creek and Gordon River converge, and that was 4 reefs completed there. Those 2 sites were completed using NOAA grant funds as well as DEP grant funds. Site 2, which is highlighted just up Haldeman Creek, is the reason I'm here today, because this was the partnership with Big Cypress Basin, as well as the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. So I'll give you some results that we're seeing from these deployments of reefs. And I'll touch on site 1 for a little bit, just because we have completed 3 years of monitoring at that site. And that can help be a predictor for what we're going to see at site 2 and what we're already seeing at site 2. So there's a lot that goes into picking sites. Substrate is one of them. We don't want to pick sites that have a muck layer where we're just going to place material and it's going to sink. And we also don't want to impact existing like seagrass and resources and oysters. So we want to avoid those areas as well. We don't want to impede navigation. What are the neighboring lands where we're putting these? Are they mangroves, seawalls, urbanized areas? These 3 sites happen to be all adjacent to mangrove areas. What is the water depth? We don't want them too deep. We made it a goal to have intertidal reefs for this effort, but subtidal is certainly an option. There was a large research effort in 2011 that we undertook for the natural reefs that still exist in the bay, quantifying disease prevalence, what the recruitment is at this site. And by recruitment, I mean, is there enough natural habitat out there so that baby oysters and spat floating around in the water, if we build reefs, is there enough seed stock to build these reefs without seed sourcing them ourselves, without putting them out? So the results of that study is that we did find there was adequate recruitment for these reefs. Wave energy is a big consideration, and I'll touch on that in a moment. And then ultimately, water quality. Are we seeing ranges for dissolved oxygen, temperature, salinity that's conducive for oysters to thrive? So one of the key considerations is salinity. So there's kind of a sweet spot that oysters like between 18 and 28 parts per thousand. And the Big Cypress Basin has this great network that makes the data available to users like myself. And in this case, I was pulling data from the GG1 weir and the flows that come over that. And so DB hydro data is what you're seeing on the upper right here. And I put, this is 2024 on the x-axis, and then on the y is cubic feet per second. So I put this just to illustrate that we have 0 flow that comes over the weir in late dry season. And then when that wet season kicks in and you start seeing the flows over the weir, that can jump up to 2,000 or more cubic feet per second. So that really influences the salinity regime that we see in the estuary and can be a stressor on the flora and fauna like oysters. So we do have to consider that in placing these and in these restoration efforts. Efforts to store water upstream, like for the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative, any projects like that that help keep water up in the watershed and reduce flows downstream will ultimately benefit our estuaries and our flora and fauna that rely on them. This is kind of a busy graph, but I just wanted to illustrate with this. This is showing salinity, how variable it is within the bay in the Gordon River system. And this gray line is the Golden Gate Canal flows. So I'll just highlight real quick, this blue triangle is one of our northernmost sites in the Gordon River that we measure. And you'll see it bounces between about 25, 30 parts per thousand in the dry season. And then once the wet season kicks in and we see that increase in freshwater flow, it drops to 0 parts per thousand within a very short amount of time. So that's a huge stressor on animals in the estuary. We have a good handle on the water quality in the Gordon River and Naples Bay system. The city does monitor 9 sites from north, like the Gordon River extension up here down through Gordon Pass. We also had 3 continuous datason stations deployed, which measured both top and bottom salinity. So another factor to this freshwater flow and impact on salinity is that stratification that we see. So we have a freshwater lens that sits on top of the more saline dense waters, and that can inhibit vertical mixing, which can decrease dissolved oxygen in the water. It also affects temperature. So that is also a well-documented phenomenon from this data. So starting with Site 1, as I mentioned, this was our largest site in our kickoff to this project. We created 23 new oyster reefs, and so the main channel would be just off the map here on the left. These 3 chevrons-shaped structures are made up of reef balls or reef modules. And these are to combat the boat wakes coming into this area to create a calm area behind that so that oysters can settle onto the created reefs. And it's worked great. Here's a picture on the lower right of the fossilized shell and rock that we use to build these reefs. And okay, good, it's playing. So our contractor came up with a pretty innovative approach to transporting and deploying the oyster shell in these sand bags, and it allows them to precisely place the shell in the footprint where we want it. And you can kind of gauge the size of these reef balls. There are reef modules. They're 5 feet tall, and here's a crewman standing next to him, so you can kind of gauge how big these are. And here they are in action. So you can see here's the boat wakes hitting the reef modules, and there's calm water on the backside, which has really been a key to the success of this site. And the bottom picture is what it looks like today. Here's a drone shot of the site. So here's our boat in the middle. We have one of the Datason sites deployed there in the middle. And we had some visitors, some manatees visit that we didn't even know were there until we looked afterwards at the photo. So here's another angle of it. You can see some of the natural reefs that still exist here that are eroding away because of the wave energy. This is looking up Haldeman Creek, so I'll talk about Site 2 next, which is right here. And within a few months of deploying, we finished in June of 2019 with Site 1. Within a few months, we were already seeing recruits onto the reefs. And what you're looking at here, all these little circles are new oysters that have settled onto the fossilized shell and rock. And we have another kind of recruit, which we kind of knew would happen, but it was a nice surprise in the quantity we're seeing it, is mangrove seedlings. So all of these are red mangroves that are recruiting onto the reef. So we're creating mangrove islands as well as oyster habitat. Again, here's a juvenile night heron. It's kind of hard to see. We have ibis little blues enjoying the site. We have a lot of monitoring metrics with with all the sites. I'm not going to be able to go over all of them, so I will just touch on the living densities we're seeing. So that's the number of living oysters per meter squared. And I'll also touch on some of the recruitment numbers or new oysters that we're seeing that are settling onto the reefs. We monitor at 6, 12, 24, and 36 month intervals. So one way we measure recruitment, we deploy these shell trays. You can see them here. So this is at site 2 now, the most recently completed site. We fill these trays with shell. We leave them out all recruitment season, so April through October. And we take them back at the end of recruitment season and we count every single oyster that's recruited onto those. And it takes a lot of time, but it's really a good way to quantify the annual recruitment that we saw that entire year without disturbing the reef itself. And then another way we establish recruitment is monthly. So we have these shell stringers. They're old oyster shells drilled with a hole. We stack them like pancakes. We put them out in triplicate, and we go every month and switch them out, and we count every single oyster on the shell. And it might be a little hard to see, but you can see some new recruits, these little circles here on these shells, and that's a good way to quantify monthly recruitment. So for site 1, which we have 3 years of data for, within 12 months, we were seeing over 1,500 living oysters per square meter. That's incredible. And it surpassed what we were seeing on our natural reefs. So the red bars here is quantifying the living oysters per square meter on the natural reefs. You can see that going down over time. And then the yellow bars are the restored or the created reefs. And that grew pretty quickly and stayed stable throughout that time frame. So now switching to site 2, again, the reason I'm here and we are so grateful to have the Big Cypress Basin as a partner with this project, as well as the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission that supplied the material for this project. So with this is just up in the mouth of Haldeman Creek, and you'll see 6 outlined in bold here. These are 6 new reefs that were created with fossilized shell and limestone rock. So this is how they were created. You'll see the barge deploying limestone rock into the footprint of the reef area. This is used to outline the reef, so it helps contain the loose shell prior to deployment of that shell. And here is a hopper barge that the shell is loaded into. It is barged out to the site, and you'll see the little conveyor belt that's used to put it right where it needs to go. And this was completed spring of last year. And this is what it looks like today. So drone shot of the 6 created reefs. And then you'll also see in this photo some of the natural reefs that are fringing the mangroves. Some come a little further out. And the goal was to place the material waterward of the natural reefs to allow them to expand and grow out into deeper waters. So for monitoring of site 2, we have different strata that we divide the site up into. So we've completed month 6 and month 12 of this monitoring. So we have the restoration strata, which is where the reefs were created. We have the reference site, so that's where we know existing oysters are, and we can use that as a comparison for the restored reefs. And then we have the control site down here, which we really don't expect to see much other than mud down there. So what are we seeing 6 months later? Well, this bar graph right here, the post-restoration of the created reefs, within 6 months, we were seeing over 2,000 living oysters per square meter. That is incredible. So, and again, with the trays where we deploy the shell trays and bring them back and count them all, we were seeing similar numbers, 2,500 living oysters per square meter. And we love noting all the critters along the way that we see that love living in the oyster reef. So here's a goby, we see toadfish, all sorts of crab. Here's a juvenile stone crab. And of course, another little blue enjoying the site. So again, after 6 months, this is the shells that we stack like pancakes and collect every month. So this is monitoring monthly recruitment. So you'll see as July into August, we see the peak recruitment, so 186 average recruitments per shell, and then it drops off in the fall. And we were really happy to see this. We saw a salinity drop, a pretty significant one, from 35 parts per thousand down to 10 in the June, July time frame, but it didn't seem to hinder the recruitment much. So we were very happy to see that. So at 12 months, we were seeing similar numbers. So again, this is showing the restored reefs, the created reefs, and we were seeing over 1,500 living oysters per square meter. This is a rock or a fossilized shell that was pulled up, and you can see some pretty large oyster recruits that are growing on this. So that is an excellent sign, 1 year post-restoration. From earlier this month when we collected the shell stringers, this is one of those shells from August 1st. And each one of these is an individual new recruit. There's so many of them, you can't even see the original shell. It is so cool. So, and again, this is what it looks like today. You can see the new mangrove seedlings recruiting onto the reefs. Here's a great blue enjoying the site. And in summary, over the past 7 years, we've created over 33 new oyster reefs, and our monitoring of them are showing great success. All I have.
Thank you for your excellent presentation. I'm sure there'll be a couple of board questions. Any questions?
Oh, yeah. Well, Katie, take your victory lap. It seemed like it's been a success. But like every season ends and now we look to the future. A couple thoughts. It's my understanding that permitting was a particularly long time frame. Is that correct?
There were several factors in that. So permitting is it definitely, you go with an expectation that that's going to take probably at least a year. We had some redesign of this project, which added to the timeline. So the design and construction of that, I mean, it was a course of a couple years.
Okay, well, time's an issue certainly with the, I'm wondering if you could take your success with this and coach other jurisdictions to do the same thing? Or do you have a whole inventory of sites in the Naples area, which is under your area of responsibility, that you can duplicate your success here so the permitting can be shortened?
I have already shared our lessons learned and what worked and what didn't and our successes. There's regional groups that are specific to shellfish restoration, for example.
Okay.
Where we each share collectively our experiences and our current projects. So that's one way this project has been shared. And then as well as presenting it at conferences to let people know. And there's like in Manatee County, for example, their whole staff called me and I spent an hour and a half on the phone with them trying to help them with their project. So yeah, it definitely, the word definitely gets out there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? I have a couple questions, Katie. I really appreciate the partnership with the city of Naples on this, and I've been out on the boat with you with some of the Basin team to see Site 2 when it was first going in, and it's great to see such positive results from that project. My question has to do with, is there any way to equate the number of oysters on the reef, or maybe the size of the reef or the square footage of the reef with cleaning power for the water? Is there something that you look at that can translate one to the other?
So we know from controlled experiments about the filtering capacity of oysters, and you can extrapolate that. You know, if we see 1,000 living oysters per square meter, we know from this controlled study that they can filter at a rate of X and, you know, remove X amount of bacteria or nutrients. You can extrapolate that to what you're seeing in terms of oyster counts on the reef.
Because it seemed to me like with the 3 sites, which are great, And they're certainly restoring some of the habitat, which is wonderful to see. And, there's progress being made, but you've got a large body of water there. And that body of water is really the stormwater runoff to a large degree from the urban area. So the water could use as much cleaning power as the oysters can provide.
Right.
And have you done some samples before and after? Are you seeing any measurable results with the water, the quality of the water?
So we did do some sampling. It's very hard to contribute it to a certain area. You have to have a very specific setup of a before and after flow through setup. With the way you mentioned, this is a large area, there's tidal exchange, there's numerous inputs from fresh water. So it's very hard, even in the middle, when taking a sample, there's so much water moving through there that we really couldn't glean any trends from within the oyster reefs versus outside. But to your other point, that's a good point, that we need to keep the pollution from even entering the water to begin with. That's going to be the biggest bang for our buck. And so this is a piece of it, the habitat creation and the benefits of water quality that oysters provide. But really, we need to keep at the upland portion of this and keeping the fertilizers and the nutrients out to begin with.
And I think that the Big Cypress Basin has moved forward with like the expansion of Freedom Park to divert more water into the wetland that's, going into the Gordon River north of this area where the oyster reefs are, right? And so those types of projects, if we can identify more of those upstream, I guess would be the right word, then it keeps it from moving into the Naples Bay area, and the habitat restoration then can maybe do more, without being inundated with so much stormwater, right?
Yes, well said.
Yeah. So I hope that you'll suggest any other things that we could be considering for other partnership projects with that. Ms. McLeod?
Yes, Katie, thank you for your presentation. You answered many of my questions. One is concerning the salinity levels. It's amazing how much they drop in different seasons, I guess. Is there a way that could be better regulated, the salinity levels into the bay? Like how do we manage that? Do we at all? Is there a way?
Well, not really through Haldeman Creek or Rock Creek. Those are going to be our natural tributaries. But the canal system, which the district manages, is a highly managed system. So I guess from my knowledge, holding any projects that can hold water upstream to reduce freshwater flows downstream is going to be a benefit to the estuary and these types of projects. But as far as the degree to which those flows can be managed, I guess it would depend on what upstream projects and the capacity to hold water upstream.
And I think there was talk about that before, right? With the Bellmead project and things like that have.
I'm not
You want-
sure, Lisa.
you want me to help?
Yeah, help me out.
Yeah, there's lots of projects that are going on that can help. Certainly as soon as we start talking about managing the system, my first thought is our tower that we're completing and how we will have full automation of the system. And I would imagine in the last 20 years, when we look at how much water we were releasing to Naples Bay and then what it is after we have a completely automated system, it would be less on average. Certainly whenever there's a big storm event, we have a lot of rain. As you all know, the gates are open and we're providing flood control, which is going to change that salinity, right? But every time that we can automate a structure, it allows us to hold water back longer and make only smaller releases. So I've told the story many times. If you have like boards on a structure and you remove the board, you're removing something this, 12 inches, 18 inches, right? Where Brad now can open up the structure 3 inches. That's a big difference of the amount of water we're going to send to the estuary. So that's one of the things. Certainly every project that we are looking at, such as the Corkscrew watershed initiative to hold water back. Every time there is a new development and they add a new feature, such as a rain garden, and hold above and beyond what their permit requires. Anybody that holds water back is going to be a help to our estuary. Does that
Good, yeah.
help
Well, hopefully
answer?
we'll see positive results as a result of what we're doing with. And then I have one other question. Katie, you know that at the village, the Venetian Village, Jeff Tayon, the owner of the village, put in his own oyster reefs. And I noticed that you have 9 sites that you monitor, probably not the Moorings Bay area, but it would be interesting to find out that area too.
We have 4 water quality monitoring sites in Moorings Bay.
Oh, okay.
And they're stretched the entire length on either side of the pass. So we don't have one immediately adjacent to that area you're talking about, but we do monitor that bay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's relatively new, right? That was put in like last year.
Say within the last year and a half, maybe.
So that may be interesting to see how those affect the water quality there. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Vice Chair Smith.
So my questions were going to be about water quality, but I think you answered those, and I can visualize the moving water and how it would be so difficult to, actually measure that. But mine is also that you're talking about a success story here, and how do you, besides talking to us, what's your outreach to kind of show those successes to taxpayers, to the neighborhood, et cetera? Because they're getting great results, and they need to kind of be translated in a way that makes sense, and that they're feeling that you're doing a great job, which you are. Which I must say, I'm not going to get you off the hook on, we are from the best class ever from Leadership Collier 2024. Oh, yeah. So a great presentation. Sorry. So, so I'd be kind of interested in, what's your outreach?
So in addition to posting this, that's readily accessible on our website, we do a lot of outreach to HOAs. We have our President's Council, that's a conglomeration of all of those. Anytime we get a request for that type of thing, we usually have a presentation that covers the whole gamut of water quality, our oyster restoration, what homeowners can do to help keep fertilizer out of our waterways, plant littoral zones, kind of the whole gamut. So we do that as often as we can, as often as requested, to get the word out to homeowners.
So it's our job to get the word out that you're available, to get the word out. Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. You did a great job. Thank you.
All right, is there any public comment on this item, Troy?
I have no registered speakers here in the room, and I see no hands currently raised on Zoom.
Great. Well, thank you, Katie,
Thank
for
you very much.
being with us today.
Appreciate it.
All right, the next item is the Picayune Strand State Forest Management Activity Update with Mike Weston from the Forestry Resource Administrator for Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. That's a long title, Mike.
It is. So, and good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. And, obviously we've gotten to the point where all 3 pump stations are on. And, so that construction phase is winding down, and we're looking at, what do we do for the maintenance phase of that portion. So overview as far as Picayune Strand, what are we going to look at? Multiple use management, natural communities. What do we do for management, recreation, and what does really the Picayune Strand Restoration Project have in store for Picayune in the future? So here's how statutes, here's what we manage. We manage for multiple resources, includes timber, conservation, fish and wildlife, and basically that last sentence, combination that will best serve the people of the state. Today, we're going to focus on recreational opportunities. Osceola turkeys, that's one of the big hunting seasons we have in the spring. Very advantageous with the work that project's done to have some increased shooting areas. But I want you to look at that slide at the bottom there, Merritt Boulevard at the tieback levee. That's approaching it from the north. Currently, that area is dry. So, and this picture was taken from 2021. So we have variances in the year, and I'll talk about that later as far as observations of the project. The project itself, so here's all the natural communities in Picayune, and you see these purple areas in there. That's where the spreader basins are for the pump stations. And this is really what the project's trying to hydrate. All this kind of reddish in there. Those are all the former cypress strands that are in there that were degraded through logging, installation of the development, and then the wildfires that went through. So in management work, we do multiple areas as far as road work, prescribed burning, et cetera. Here's one of the interesting parts. On the right side there, that is a wet prairie. There should be hardly any cabbage palms in there. And that's another thing we're going to look at, and folks at the Water Management District in the invasive plant section are looking at, is how can we effectively control those cabbage palms through a minimal use of herbicides. And so they're in their second study right now of trying to figure out how we do that. Very, very difficult, but very important. And the big part is all about cooperation. As we move forward, Big Cypress Basin, Lisa and her entire staff has been very cooperative as far as how we're putting together the agreement on managing this. And that's been a really good thing. We'll see about that here a little bit later on. Again, current recreational facilities, this really hasn't changed in the last 5-6 years. The big part on the bottom there, that 12-mile tieback levee trail. That's the tieback levee that's part of the project. As part of the project, that can be actually hiked on and biked on. It's now complete. You can span the entire thing. And so that's really, if people start on the western end of it over by Miller Boulevard and go all the way to Merritt Pump Station and past it when the eagles aren't nesting, you could actually get a 24-mile bike ride or hike in the forest. I don't know if you'd want to hike that far. Might take a couple days, but that's really unique down in South Florida. Again, here's our recreational activities we have. And again, so the restoration project, it's fully here. This is a year of observation. What are water levels doing? Where can we get to? Effectively, if you look at, 10 years ago, you could drive easily to the southeastern corner of the forest, Jane Scenic Drive, where it enters into Fakahatchee, in about 30 minutes. Right now, that trip will take you 2 hours in a swamp buggy. So obviously, the recreation and the access has changed. And obviously, that's in the name of the ecological restoration. We're still working to answer what that's going to do for the recreation component. We do still have off-highway vehicle access for swamp buggies and UTVs for hunters. So we were able to satisfy the piece as far as getting them access back onto those roads. And then what are we looking at doing in the future? Whether it's a kayak launch in Port of the Isles area or over off of Miller Boulevard near the pump station, and additional hiking trails. One of the things we're looking at is, and I'll show you in some of the numbers here, is improving our current campsites or campground at the office at 52nd Avenue. Currently, we have 6 primitive campsites and 12 hunt primitive campsites and a group campsite. Primitive camping around the state of Florida is basically decreasing by 5% every year as far as demand. And the increase in demand is to have developed sites that people can pull their RVs up to. So we're funded this year to actually research putting in that campground. And also, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, we received $100,000 for replacement for our T-Canal campground from Water Management District. And those funds will also go into this project as well. But that'll have up to 14 RV campsites, 10 primitive campsites, and then flush bathrooms and showers. And we're going to start going through the permitting process on that. We've also added 12 miles of single track bicycle and hiking trails. That starts at the overpass off of Everglades into the forest. It actually connects to 62nd and Miller. And we're working to establish groups to help with the maintenance of that and deconflicting other user groups. We've worked hard with our equestrian groups to keep them off of those areas and encourage them to be on their own trails. And again, from a visitor's perspective, what does Picayune look like now? It's wetter for longer. And the big issue is driving down south of the tieback levee. The old roads that were there, the material that was left was whatever was on site. Some areas are rocky, other areas are really sandy. And within 3 weeks of these roads being flooded, you can have 6-foot holes form in the roads. In the dry season, we'll work to grade that material back in, but access will slowly decrease as far as easy driving south of the tieback levee. However, there are far more opportunities now as far as wildlife viewing and water-related activities. And And again, during the wet season, basically at Miller Boulevard, the forest is split in two as far as access. So the access now will be off of Sable Palm Road on that western part, then Everglades Boulevard off of the eastern part. And again, what are we looking at this year? Where's the water, and can additional access be planned? We've actually moved our kiosks and entrances up towards I-75 and the overpass. And the big part of that is a lot of people complain, my car gets too dusty when I come into the forest, come into your parking areas. As part of the project, there was the overpass entrance that was put, or the entrance that was put in for construction that's still there for emergency access. We're able to utilize a lot of those mowed areas that we've kept as additional parking for people to come in. That's a big bike trailhead now. Recent calibrations, fiscal year 22-23, we had about 237,000 users in the forest. That was everyone from in-holders to management vehicles, etc. This past year, we had 214,000. So we are seeing a steady decrease in people coming into the forest. It might be because there's more flooded roads and less opportunity to go around. Camping wise, same thing. 2 years ago, we had about 4,200 camper nights. This last year, we had about 3,100. So again, that steady decrease. That's why we're going to look at doing the improvements in the campgrounds. This is the bike trailhead you can see here from the overpass at I-75 and Everglades. Again, that beautiful road that came in for the construction. That's a really great opportunity for people to park off to the sides and have access and still allow that emergency vehicle access. So we really appreciate keeping that facility there. What I'm going to focus on now in the time I have remaining is the tieback levee and the access points. So there are really three trailheads along the tieback levee trail: Merritt Boulevard, Everglades Boulevard, and Miller Boulevard. And these provide prime viewing access to the pump stations, as well as a unique elevated trail to view the forest. So as we go to look to our farthest to the east, here's Merritt and the Merritt and 52nd, and it kind of looks like a ramshackle road. We're going to do some improvements on this to get access about a quarter mile down to where you can see in the little distance there. That's where the tieback levee is. And a big part of that is that you can access that point. It's only 1/8 of a mile to the pump station there. You can view alligators, wading birds, all sorts of stuff. And again, we do continue to advise people not to climb the barbed wire fence and not to shoot at the pump stations. So here's that same road that I was talking about before that was really flooded. This is a Merritt Boulevard. Look at my cursor in the tieback levee. And so 3 years ago, you would have had water up to this point. And again, that's just that. It's how the rainy season sets up. So there's going to be variability. But again, the roads south of the tieback levee are going to remain really, really rough to access. We've actually downgraded them to tertiary roads. And again, this gives you, it's that ninth path. This is along Merritt Pump Station. And this is access point. Go back and see that spreader basin, etc. And it's just been a really great viewing point for folks. So we really appreciate the ability for folks to continue to utilize that. So now we're looking at Everglades Boulevard. This is going to be the main gateway in the southern area of the forest. And we'll actually talk about some parking area improvements that we did along with the basin at this point. But looking south, again, this road's been flooded for about the past 3 years, and you are starting to have those 6-foot holes open up on it. So it might be necessary in the future to kind of have an alternate transportation routes that are planned. Here's a parking area. It's 100 feet deep by 300. You can actually see a couple trucks parked there. They're hunters bringing their UTVs. They got their trailers there. So basically the weekend after we got this done, and this was Lisa with her staff, Andrew Wolf, Mike Barber, etc. Brought in equipment, helped spread rock and material. And a unique part of this is we actually found, and I'll talk about this on Miller, the area right by the canal where we were originally going to put, or right by the tieback levee where we were going to put this, actually was flooded. So we ended up moving this north, again, that adaptive management. And here, switching over to Miller in the tieback levee. So this is at 62nd, where I took this picture, and this is the private lands canal. Then if you look further down here, the road's entirely flooded. The plan was to put a parking area way down by the tieback levee. We're going to now have to move that up to 62nd, and that's fine. Again, it's learning what the project's going to give us and adapting to it. Nice part about that, it actually ties in with the southern bike trailhead we have off of 62nd. So it's not, I mean, it was sort of accidentally planned how this was put into place, but I think it'll do well. As far as final questions, we do 2 to 3 recreation newsletters per year. Also, we have our friends of Florida State Forest. Another part that I'll share from the helicopter ride that we did. Immediately south of the pump station, you would think you got these big pump station pumping all this water out with the spreader basins. You'd have water a quarter mile south of that on the first east-west roads. When we flew over, it was really amazing to see that that water was sticking to those deep channels that needed to be there. The other part we found is up to a quarter mile north of there, the wet areas are holding more water longer in the year. And what that allows is that remnant vegetation that was in these old strands, et cetera, and stuck around throughout all this 60 years is starting to be able to steadily expand outward, whether it's pop ash, whether it's some of the dogwoods, et cetera. The big key on this project is going to be how fast can we get the cypress back in. So thank you. And with that, I'll submit to any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We'll go ahead to board questions. Vice Chair Smith?
Thank you for your presentation. One thing you indicated, there's a water trail. What can you use on a water trail?
So water trail right now, that's going to be kayaks only. What we look at, yeah.
Okay. Can you, do you capture where the users are coming from? I'm kind of curious. Are they coming from the state of Florida, or is this like?
We don't, only because when we sell our day use passes, it's all routed through Tallahassee on our online. So we don't, through some of the user cards on our Trail Walker trail, we do. And so we have everyone from not as much Canada anymore, but we'd have people from Canada, Europe, and throughout the US that would come down and use Picayune.
It's interesting. How do they get the word out? I mean, is there, I know you have got the recreation newsletter, but there's got to be on the website, but is there a group?
With that, it's working with, whether it's the biking groups, hikers, et cetera, doing anything we can, Facebook, other social media, and targeting that.
Does our tourism department push it out as a, like a highlight of what you can do here? Because it's really cool.
That I wouldn't know, but I'd be happy to reach out and have that as part of it.
Okay. Tourism is down, so maybe that's why you're down too. You know what I mean?
That could be.
But I think there's outlets that you can use that are highly effective.
That's a good one.
But yeah, they're the best.
Yeah,
Okay.
tourism.
Thank you.
Mr. Hill?
Michael, here's a hypothetical question. Let's just say you got, the governor asked you to come into his office and wanted to review the Picayune Strand from a high level as to what benefit you're now seeing from your perspective. I know depending on other people and their responsibilities, they may have a different view, but if you could just give me some high level points of the value that has been created for the residents of Florida from this incredible project.
I would probably say in that it's too early, but the initial is that we're seeing upland grasses and upland vegetation be replaced by the wetland vegetation that should have come in.
Okay.
And so we've gone from the modeling to the actual inaction part of it going on. The other part is I think you're seeing an increase in the hydro period in a lot of areas where it needs to be. So an example, I'd ask some of the project experts, the corner of Patterson and Stewart.
Okay.
You know, it looks like the Willowhead, looks like nothing's there, et cetera. That area was restored and had water flowing on it as of 2016. You go there now and it's pop ash, so before it was like just low oaks, nothing really special, et cetera. Now you go there, it's red maples, pop ash, swamp dogwood. It's everything that should be there. The only component that's missing is the cypress.
Okay.
And then the other part is, we're really seeing again recruitment of plant species where we should. So the pine is recruiting in areas where there's pine where it can. The same with the main ones they use, pop ash, red maple, et cetera. They're all doing what they should do right now. I think also what you're having is you're not having this flushing effect. So when the canals were in place, our dry season, we could start burning in the forest, and usually in about October, November. Now we're having to hold off in areas and look at that into February. So I think you're having a real, just complete overturning of what this system had turned into because of the drainage and the failed development into what it should be going forward.
Okay. Do we use any of that area or any of those aquifers used for water supply?
I don't believe down in that area.
Yeah.
So, and that would be a question from the
Okay.
water management on that. We do monitor the water levels.
Okay.
But,
What about anything downstream, like in terms of the estuary impact as the water flows out? Is there any science on that yet? So that would be obviously west of Faca Union Canal and that area.
and that would be outside my area
Okay.
of expertise. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Yep. Thank you.
Ms. McLeod?
Yeah. Michael, to get a better understanding of this whole area, maybe the next time I may have missed a tour, or if you set up a tour, I would love to be a part of that.
Sure. Certainly.
Lisa, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I did. I could answer Mr. Hill's question about monitoring downstream. That is Rookery Bay. If you remember, Pat O'Donnell. Yes, his shark study. Rookery Bay is monitoring that downstream area. And so we had him here in the springtime, I think, right? And it's just been 6 months since he's starting to see this restoration, or a few months, I'm sorry. So we'll have him back again in the future.
Okay. I wanna
Whenever
get
he
Mr.
has
Hill's
something.
Response to that too.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Ms. McLeod, did you have something or?
I already.
Okay,
I'm good.
okay, great. All right. I just had one comment, and it was about the tieback levy. I think that's really going to open up some really positive recreation opportunities out there that haven't existed before, and some of which we've talked about, but I'll be looking forward to seeing what comes forward as we work through this. But thank you, Mike, for all you do and the partnership with you and your entire team. And appreciate it. Thanks for being
Yep.
here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We'll now hear the final budget presentation from Julie. Thank you for being here, Julie.
Good morning, or
Morning.
good afternoon, actually, Ms. Chair and Vice Chair, Madam Chair and Basin Board members. I am standing in for Candy to walk through your final millage and budget approval presentation. So today's presentation will review the fiscal year 2025-26 Big Cypress Basin millage rate, the 2025-26 revenue and expense overview and budget highlights, and resolutions for your approval on the millage rate and budget. Your fiscal year 2025-26 proposed millage rate is 0.0978 mils, which is the same value as last year. It equates to $9.78 per $100,000 of taxable value. A homeowner in Collier County with an average home value of $500,000 would pay an estimated $48.90 per year. Some examples of services that residents receive are flood control protection, capital infrastructure improvements, and land management activities. Your fiscal year 2025-26 budget revenue and expenditure pies are before you. Your budget is $22,247,748. Your largest source of revenue is from ad valorem taxes at 15.5 million, or 70%, with your additional revenues coming in from investment income, lease revenue and permit fees, funding from Collier County supporting the Gordon and Palm River structure replacements, fund balance, And your newest source of revenue is the 50% cost share with the Army Corps of Engineers, which is approximately $1.4 million, supporting the Big Cypress Basin Field Station operations and maintenance of Picayune Strand. Your expenditure pie highlights the major areas that your basin funds support. The largest is for your ongoing support of the Big Cypress Basin capital program projects. Flood control operations, which is your BCB field station, the BCB Service Center staff and facilities, funding for the BCB field station operations of Picayune Strand, along with land stewardship, modeling, and monitoring support, ongoing design on the Gordon and Palm River replacements, and the emergency reserves, which we do rebudget every year. The next few slides highlight where and what your funding supports within the basin. Administrative Services and Executive Office, your Service Center, which supports the Corkscrew Watershed Initiative and Basin Water Management, Engineering, Construction, and Modeling Division. They're the ones who take care of your capital program, and some highlights working for them are the I-75 #2 Weir Replacement Project and the Bird Rookery Boardwalk Replacement. They also handle modeling efforts to effectively manage the basin's flood protection system. Your Field Operations and Land Management Division support you on the management of the network of 123 miles of primary canals and your 31 water control structures. They also support the Picayune Strand operations and maintenance of the Miller, Merritt, and Fauca Union pump stations. And they provide land management support for you for the Green Heart of the Everglades Recreation area and the land management activities for the Collier County portion of Crew Lands, which has the Willow Marsh treatment, some support at the tram, some support for tram and equipment maintenance, and then your ongoing tree management program. Information technology supports you in operating the SCADA system and telemetry base stations, which includes your security monitoring, microwave tower and maintenance inspections, and then your reserves, debt service, and fees for hurricane reserve, property appraiser, tax collector fees, and self-insurance. Some key next steps for the governing board are September 11th at district headquarters. We'll have our fiscal year tentative budget update at the regular board meeting. And then our first public hearing will be at 5:15. And that's when the board will consider the fiscal year 2025-26 tentative millage rate, agricultural privilege tax roll, and budget. Our final step in the budget process is the September 23rd meeting at 5:15, when we have our final public hearing to adopt the fiscal year 2025-26 budget, final millage rate, and budget. Madam Chair, the first resolution before you is to approve the millage rate.
All right, thank you, Julie. Excellent presentation. Are there any questions for Julie before we move forward? Is there any public comment?
We have no registered slips in the room and no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, thank you, Troy. We have two motions. Board members will take one at a time. The first motion that I'll need in a second is to approve Resolution BCBB 2025-80801, a resolution of the Big Cypress Basin Board of the South Florida Water Management District approving the submittal of the millage rate for fiscal year 2025-2026, requesting the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District to levy ad valorem taxes within the Big Cypress Basin based on the rate of 0.0978 mils to finance basin functions contained in the fiscal year 2025-2026 basin budget. And with that, I'll ask for a motion and a second.
I so move.
Okay, PJ moved. Michelle seconds.
Yes, I'll
Okay,
second.
second, okay. All right, we'll conduct a roll call vote. Vice Chair Smith,
Approve.
Mr. Hill,
Approve.
Ms. McLeod,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That passes unanimously. The next motion is to approve Resolution BCBB 2025-0802, a resolution of the Big Cypress Basin Board of the South Florida Water Management District submitting the fiscal year 2025-2026 basin budget in the amount of $22,247,748 to the governing board of the South Florida Water Management District for inclusion in the district budget. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion so moved.
Okay, Mr. Hill moves.
Second, please.
Second by Vice Chair Smith. I'll now conduct the roll call. Vice Chair Smith,
Approve.
Mr. Hill,
Approve.
Ms. McLeod,
Yes.
and I vote yes. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Julie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to have the final slide be some pictures of the people who make this basin great.
Oh.
And these are some pictures of the people who support you all.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
That's terrific. Thanks to all of them for all the great work, because I can already see through the budget year this year. I mean, we've picked up the green heart of the Everglades. The Picayune Strand is coming online. We've got large capital projects going on at the basin. We have picked on some major work, or picked up some major work by some of the great work our team is doing. So thank you so much, and thanks to the whole team.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, we'll then move into our technical reports. First one is the field station report with Jesus Carrasco.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members.
Afternoon.
My name is Jesus Carrasco, and I'm the Bureau Chief for the BCB field station. Today, I'd like to provide an overview of some of the work that we've done at the field station, some of the maintenance activities, and the 3-month outlook. In this slide here, the V notches are removed to regulate the water elevation in the canal. This is completed at the beginning of the wet season. Here at Henderson Creek, as the water level rises, we open our manual structures to regulate water levels. In this slide, our crew chief, Willie, is doing the job by raising it. Here, staff is manually changing from dry season to wet season configuration. This is accomplished by moving orange painted rebars from our counterweight to another. You can see the rebars with the colors there on the right. Vegetation in the Green Canal created a large jam on the east side of districts cleared the obstruction utilizing the field station's conver and truckster equipment. In this slide, the Miami Field Station assisted in the removal of submerged vegetation in the I-75 canal. The way it works is that the towboat they provide drags a large steel plow along the bottom of the canal and cuts and uproots the submerged vegetation. The operator then retrieves the plow, lowers the basket in front of the boat, and scoops up the floating vegetation and deposits it on the canal bank for removal. As you can see, this is a pretty big operation. It requires some big equipment, 60-ton crane, low buoy, and that towboat, which on the average weigh over 20,000 pounds. In this slide, the tough boom is being attached that needed repairs to ensure its ability to withstand tremendous pressure from encountered when vegetation debris accumulate against the boom during a strong current. So for our 3-month outlook, our crews will be closely monitoring our canals for any potential obstructions, ensuring all structures are fully operational. And for our SERP activity program, we'll be talking about the structure inspection programs. So on the next slide here, you'll see the contract drivers complete a U-boat replacement and the number 6 flow pump in the FACA Union Pump Station. And the next slide, we have Akeem painting trip hazards throughout the pump stations to make sure that we have a safe work environment for our staff or any visitors that we may have. And here on this slide, Raphael is repairing a leaky pipe at the FACA pump station. And Andres performing some routine maintenance at the Merritt pump station. And also we have Hal, or better known as Buddy, is working on the power takeoff unit at the Merritt pump station. So through 3-month outlook, we continue training our new pump station employees, ensure that all equipment is fully operational and ready when needed. And with that, I'll take any questions, but I did want to share that Dan Walsh, our new superintendent for the BCB fuel station, has a neighbor that comes and visits him almost on a daily basis, and here he is in the picture right here.
It's a big boy,
That's amazing. That's a big one.
big one.
Yes, ma'am.
Goodness.
And based on what Dan has told me, it sounds like him and that bear are missing each other by 5 or 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, Dan,
Yeah.
but that's all I have, and I'll be glad to take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Jesus. Questions for field station operations? Go ahead.
I got a question, and if it's detailed, we can, somebody can get back to me, and it's actually maybe Lisa could address it as well. From an accounting perspective, how does it work when you have that equipment coming over here from Miami, from the district, I presume? Do they charge us for the rental fee for that equipment? It seems like that material amount of,
Well, the towboat and that type of equipment is something that we already have at the district.
okay,
So it's not uncommon for field stations to share equipment whenever there's a need.
okay.
All right. Anything else for Jesus? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jesus.
Okay, the water conditions report with Brad Jackson. Good afternoon, Brad.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members. Again, Brad Jackson here. I'll be here talking about your water conditions report since the last time we gave it back in July. So I'll just jump in here with the normal information here. So talk here a little bit about the rainfall that we've had this wet season so far. So I'll pick up from basically June, where we've had an above average month in June, and then that trend reversed in July. We had a little bit below. And so far this month in August, we're running pretty much right at normal, even though it says here 5.3 inches this month. That's normal for this time of the month. We still got about 10 days of the month left, so we'll probably catch up. And it has rained the last couple of days. So I know this shows a 6-inch deficit for the year so far, but that was all dry season really. So those are that deficit's pretty much been erased at this point, as far as the water levels in the ground and inside the canals and everything. So looking at where the actual rainfall fell in July, if you look at the graph on the left, kind of the cream color, the one that shows 8 to 9 inches, that would be your average, what we would expect. Each little pixel represents, a couple of square kilometer area. So if they're blue, they're below average. If they're red, they're above average. So it kind of gives you an idea, a feeling for where the average rainfall fell versus where the below average. And really the highest areas was the Cocohatchee, the Golden Gate, Maine, while meanwhile the coastal basins and kind of the rural areas out to the east had a little bit below average. And then if you move over to the right on August, most of the areas you see a lot of cream colors, the 4 to 6 inch range, that's average. Down in the coastal basins at the very southern end, south of Picayune Strand, in the 10,000 Islands, got the 9 to 10 inches already. So you're already seeing above average rainfall in those areas. But generally speaking, you've got normal rainfall for August, which is a stark contrast from last year. So quickly, I'll kind of talk here a little bit about each of the canal segments, and this one here is the Golden Gate Main Canal and how we operate the system, what water levels, and really what are we doing operationally to make sure that we have enough water in the system and not send too much out of it and not keep too much inside on the freshwater side of things. So it's really a balancing act, and it's really a matter of how much rainfall we really get inside the system. So to talk about these graphs, the green kind of band on each one of these, that would be your normal, what we would normally see. The blue bar is your operational range, where we're able to hold the water levels that's our flexibility. So we have the ability to move it to the top, you have the ability to move it to the bottom of that range or below if we're having some sort of emergency. But the trend I want to show here is that we're trying to keep the water level steady. We've had average rainfall this year, so there's no reason to really push a lot of water outside of the system. We're balancing flood control and water conservation. So you generally see on all of these graphs that the blue and the purple lines, they'll be somewhere just above the green band, indicating we're holding more water than we have historically because there's not as much rain that's coming into us from Mother Nature. Just to compare some of the questions from earlier, how much water have we discharged out of Golden Gate 1? Versus if you compare last year, I know there was a question about that, and Katie had some graphs about it too. If you compare and contrast last year versus this year, it's very different. So last year, just for example, we discharged 130,000 acre feet out of GG1. It was a very wet year. We were 150% average. If you compare that to this same time period this year, we're only at 40,000. So it's a 70% decrease from what we did last year. So it's strongly connected to how much rain we actually get and the operations. So we hold back what we can in the system, but we can't, when there's too much, there's little that can be done, and that water has to go out of the system. So that's kind of the balancing act of how we can manipulate what's happening, but there is a point where the system's maxed out and we have to provide that flood control. So quickly, I'll go through the Cocohatchee and the other basins. You'll see a similar pattern on all of these where we're basically trying to hold it. The water levels above that 75th percentile. You'll see a few adjustments here and there as it's wetter and drier in small increments, but it's basically the trend is retain water with minor flood control this wet season. That's kind of our goal looking backwards. What comes in the future, we don't know yet. Again, FACA Union up on the top part, this is the FACA Union 5 at the north side. The south side, FACA Union 1 is the purple line. And what you'll notice there is that water level is near the historical minimums for that particular water control structure. And that doesn't have anything to do with the amount of rainfall we've had. It has more to do with the Picayune Strand being online and that there's no more canals contributing to that point. So the water that used to go out of that canal, that's the water that Mike was talking about earlier that's sitting on top of the landscape now, providing the hydro period and hydrating the wetlands just like it should be. So I want to spend a little time talking about Picayune Strand. Everyone else has talked about Picayune Strand. I want to spend a couple minutes too. So looking back, I grabbed this picture. I was provided this picture. This is from 1978, looking down one of the canals in Picayune Strand. So this is the forest in its drained condition. You can see the forest is dry. The water's in the canal. I mean, there's no water on top of the roads at that point. You remember this picture when I show some of the next ones, it's a very stark difference compared to what this looked like in its pre-restoration condition. So today I also want to focus on Picayune Strand, but just on the western half, just on the Miller portion of it. It's the newest. It's the one that will see the biggest change between last year and this year versus how much water we've pumped and moved and restoration and everything. So on this particular screen, I've circled the S486. That is the pump station. And again, it's the same graph. You can see the blue line on that is basically just above the 75th percentile. It's just outside of the green band. So it's consistent with all the other areas that we're keeping water levels at throughout the system. The interesting part of that is if you look at the bottom part of that graph where it says daily flow, the teal line, that's the actual flow rate, the water that's moved through that pump station. Every drop of water we pumped. And it's about 200 CFS to 300 CFS per day. But the top of that graph, that's the actual capacity of the pump station. We haven't approached anything close to the actual capacity of the pump station. We're only 25% so far because it's only been an average year. So this is what you might expect to see during an average typical wet season for this Miller section. So that's how much water we pump, but how do you compare what's actually on the ground? And I've got the same wells, the same graphs, so you get kind of used to seeing these patterns. So these four graphs, they correspond to the triangles in the yellow rectangle on the left. So the top left one is the top left well, and so on and so forth. So the top two, those should be water levels that are still maintaining flood control. So those are with flood protection. That's not in the restoration area. So you would want to see the blue line, which is this year's water level, somewhere near the green and not above land surface, because that would mean that is not would be a restored condition. These areas have to be kept with flood control. If you move to the south line, the south part of the tieback levee, the T2 and W2, the bottom graphs, you'll see the blue line and the purple lines, which is last year's water levels, are very close together, indicating, so last year was a very wet year. So you had a lot of water sitting on the surface because we just had so much of it. But this year we've had normal rain. And you would expect it to follow maybe more of an average typical pattern. But in this case, since the canals are no longer there, we're seeing that level basically the same as it was in its flooded condition. But the interesting part is that it's not so high that it's beyond levels that the forest hasn't seen before. So it's not over wet either. It's seeing levels it's seen before historically. See if I can get my mouse here. So it follows just below the ground surface elevation, and they're all kind of running together. And the thing you don't see is the line dipping down quickly, indicating that hydro period stays, the water stays on the surface, which is the restoration at work. Then quickly here at I have four more graphs. This is just the next set of wells further on down in the Picayune Strand. And it's the same story here, but it's basically indicating that water levels are comparable with last year when we had an excessively wet season. So here's this one here. You see the purple and the blue lines hovering above this green. If you compare that with 2023, this red line here, that year was very dry. It may be a little bit below normal. So if you wanted to compare pre and post restoration, the blue line, if we still had the canals there, would be very close to this red line. So it's showing us the water levels are really 2 to 3 feet higher in the ground out there than they were pre-project. But the graphs show us one thing. The interesting part is I was able to go up on the flight as well over Picayune Strand, so it's nice to be able to see what it actually looked like from the air. On the left here, this is the very southern end of Miller Canal. You can still see, I mean, they just finished plugging this canal in June, and the vegetation hasn't even had a chance to take back over yet, but you can see the water just pouring over, and not just down the canalway, but these side areas are wet too. So you can see the sheet flow in action. And I also have a small picture or video here. This is the Miller pump station, and this is the spreader basin here. Keep that in mind. So the water fills up in here, and then it spreads out through each one of these little bays here and spreads into the forest. This is where the canal used to be. But you can see it's not just right there. It's also down where this old road used to be. It's in this forest area here. Here's the Vaca Union pump station here. And even all this is all wet too. So it's in the main flowway just south of the Miller pump station, which I'll talk about here a little bit more in just a second. So to what Mike talked about earlier about how the forest used to look, I pulled up the 1940 aerials, and that is the left side of the screen here. I superimposed, so the canals weren't there in 1940. This is what it looked like before man messed with anything. So this is what it looked like naturally. I superimposed these to give us a frame of reference. US 41 was here, down here at the bottom, so that existed, right? But you can see the different flow paths even through this. And so just to try and highlight some of this, you can see the different flow paths coming here. So this is the pump station here, and you can see the water coming down like this, as it used to do. I mean, this is what it did in 1940. This is Merritt Pump Station. It would come out this way and spread out that way. And here's the Vaca Union one. It'd come out that way. There's a little high spot right here, and I note that just because on the right side over here, on the right side of the chart, you can see a different graph, and this is what it looks like today on the right. The oranges, the yellows, the greens, those indicate the water level is either right at the ground surface or flooded. And so you can see where these blue lines terminate, that's the pump stations here. And you can see those flowways again coming back through like this and something like this. Here's this high spot again right here that corresponds to one right here, just like it was in 1940. So you can see these old historic flowways come back and are basically being shown restoration already going back to what it looked like in 1940. So I'll continue to tweak and monitor, this tool, and really maybe there'll be some more that I can tell about this in the future. But we're only 2 months into pumping at the Miller pump station already, so we can already see some of that coming back. So, and this one zoomed in a little bit more just on the FACA Union and the Miller pump station. This is the same 1940 aerial, but it's zoomed in a little bit closer. And here you've got Miller Boulevard on the left. And here's that old flowway right through here. Here's that high area that I mentioned before. And you can kind of see these same flowways coming down this way. And it's right where the spreader basin, where you saw in the video, the water coming out of it. So it's really following those same paths as you would suspect it would. So it's really what, it's nice to see it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, at least early on. The water's going where it's supposed to be going, and that kind of compares with, or agrees with what Mike said earlier as what he's actually seeing on the ground. So that's my part about Picayune. So I'll jump back into the normal presentation. This is the seasonal outlook, what we have to look forward to. We're still in the midst of hurricane season. We're approaching the peak of it. So right now there's, Aaron just went by the East Coast, and there's a few more waves that are out there. We're monitoring all of those. So we're still got activity that we've got to contend with and be able to make changes to the system. So we're poised and ready to make those changes. The field station's done a great job keeping the canals clear, and we can make changes to the system very quickly as the forecast changes. But as we move into dry season, as you see at the bottom there, we might have a chance for below average rainfall. So we really don't know what we're going to get coming up. And then in the short term, we might have continue the daily rainfalls. You can see the hurricane centers. This is from a couple days ago. Those waves, those blobs out in the Atlantic, those are all expected to turn north or skirt south and not develop. So there's no potential or anticipated impacts or anything that would affect us at this moment. But since we're approaching September, we'll always be watching that closely. I'll close there. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Brad, for your excellent presentation. Are there any questions for Brad on his water conditions report?
Brad, I'm not complaining about this, but we have obviously been haven't even been touched or even remotely touched by any hurricanes yet. I know it's not your focus, but has there been any explanation that you may have heard of from the weather experts as to why we are storms haven't gotten remotely close or even developed?
So it's that graph I showed, it's still early in the season. The
Yes.
main peak of the season really doesn't ramp up till middle of August through middle of October. So that's when the flurry of activity kind of is. I don't have a reason why necessarily before that, other than most of the hurricane season is still in front of us.
Not complaining.
Me neither. I understand.
I don't see any other questions, Brad. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Great job in explaining all this, Brad.
Need more rain though.
Okay,
Right.
let's go to our staff reports, the monthly financial report with Julie Maytok.
Good afternoon again, everyone. The monthly financial for June is included in your packet, and I have nothing but positive information for you. Your ad valorem taxes are over 100% collection, so that's good news, and your investment interest continues to grow. Currently, the district is at a $99.7 million expenditure, and they've encumbered 12.2 of your $21.9 million current budget. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Julie. Are there any questions for Julie on her monthly report? I don't see any, so thank you so much, Julie. Okay, that brings us to our last general public comment period of the meeting. And again, it's another chance for members of the public to speak on anything that was not covered in today's meeting. So Troy, do we have any public comment?
Madam Chair, we still have no registered speakers in the room and no hands raised on Zoom.
Okay, all right, then we'll move on to final board comment. And this is our last opportunity to talk with each other. Ms. McLeod?
Something funny. Andy, you had said something about the hurricanes, and my sister says that be careful in the month of September if a hurricane starts with I. And so we still have a couple different letters left to go for September. So I just thought of that. We're not there yet. Anyway, but the second thing that I wanted to mention is I've been in communication with Leadership Collier Lunch and Learn Committee to see if we could get on their agenda for a presentation. And it looks like we may be able to get on their March schedule. So I am working on that, and I'll let you know if I can make that happen. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hill?
Just going back to the Picayune Strand presentation, I heard Michael mention the lack of cypress trees a number of times. I don't know what could be done to increase planting of cypress trees to help speed up the process rather than waiting for nature to take its course. With some of us, that may not be helpful, given how long nature takes to grow in certain areas. So I think the importance of trees is quite often, it's a simple thing, but in Naples area, we probably cut down significantly more trees than commence a growing cycle. So I think it's really important to maybe spend some time on that to see if there is an opportunity where we can jumpstart the reforesting of the Picayune Strand rather than waiting for nature to take its course.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And maybe we could look into that, Lisa, and get back at our next meeting. I will say that in several instances when the Corps was working on the project, if there was a strand of bald cypress, they would work around it and leave the mature bald cypress out in the Picayune. So that was always positives to see. Vice Chair Smith?
Great presentations today. I thought I always learned something new. Excellent. And other than that, just thank you for the opportunity to be vice chair and look forward to what we have in the future going on.
Right. I have one thing. I just saw Representative Berna Broach come into the session. Is there anything that you'd like to say to the board, or are you just stopping in to say hello?
Here.
Thank you. And I wasn't expecting to speak. I've been watching the meeting from my office, but wanted to make sure I was here when you guys finished so I could say hello and thank you for all you do for water quality. It's really amazing the hard work you do and you take on every month in your meetings. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here today. And I don't have anything to add to the board comment. I would like to thank everyone for their participation today. Great presentations. Lisa, you're in your team, as always. First class all the way. And board members, thank you for the great discussion and the engagement with all of our speakers today. My head's just swimming from Brad Jackson's report of that history from the Picayune Strand, and to see that water flow was just amazing.
Right.
And I'd like to thank the district staff who supported today's meeting. Yvette, it's nice to see you back with the board. I know you're Johnny on the spot when it comes to filling in those places when they need to be filled, and you just jump right in and do a great job. So thank you for all of that. And Troy, as always, thank you for your support. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you back here on October 30th for our next meeting. This meeting's adjourned.
Do we dress up in our costume? Oh, yeah.